Hi, this is Dan Schmidt, the CEO and co-founder of DoubleLoop. It's hard to believe that the Amplitude community is only 5 months old. I really enjoy watching the in-depth discussions that are happening there at the intersection of analytics and product. Esther Trapadoux is the architect of that community. In this session, we go crazy deep into her strategy and thought process. There are some existential questions that Esther is grappling with in her strategy for the community and how it fits into the bigger goals of Amplitude. And it's really fun watching her grapple with these questions in real time. Hope you enjoy. Do you want to start by just explaining who you are and what you do and where you
Yeah.
work?
Okay. Hi, I'm Esther. I'm on the growth marketing team at Amplitude, and I head up community at Amplitude.
Got it. And big picture, what is community at Amplitude? Like, why does Amplitude have a community? What are you hoping to achieve with the community?
So there are two big goals. Actually, one main problem with, I think, any B2B SaaS, but probably even more so for analytics platforms, it's really difficult for people to talk about what they're doing in an analytics platform. They either lack confidence or they don't want to like reveal any of their secret sauce. So community is a really good way for us to create a safe space and get people to connect with each other and start sharing stories about how they're using analytics, about data governance, things that are working, things that aren't working. And then what we're trying to do is not necessarily create a community where it's just Amplitude users, but we want to bring in people who are analytics lovers, but maybe not using Amplitude, and put them in the same space as well. And they kind of see what happens. Some of them will end up converting. And like, I think if we do it right, especially from the metrics perspective, like if we understand what's actually working, then we can improve conversion rates and get more non-Amplitude users to become Amplitude users. And on the other side, we can get Amplitude users to improve their product usage. And it's like overall, I think a good differentiator to have like a really robust community.
Yeah, it's actually kind of a related question to that. It seems like it's clear how for Amplitude, it's a differentiator of how the community, if you were to compare the Amplitude community to other like data-oriented communities online, like how would you say it compares? Like, is there something that makes the community unique compared to some other data communities out there?
Yeah, I was actually talking to a few members about this to understand like the competitive landscape aside from I just don't have time, which is real. And I was listening to people say how they belong to analytics communities and they belong to product communities, but there's not really an intersection of the both. There might be like a channel here or there, like in an analytics community or in a product community, but in the product one, it indexes really hard on very theoretical stuff, or even like it might come down to frameworks, but it's still rather theoretical and strategic. And then the analytics communities are not thinking as much about how to tie back to business outcomes and how to say like how much revenue they generated from like X activity. And so this is like the intersection of those two things, but an entire community dedicated to that.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that makes sense where you have like product communities I'm a member of will have like the data oriented channel, and the data communities will have a product related channel, but it's not like woven into the fabric of the entire community in the way that it is for Amplitude, it seems.
So you're missing a lot of stories. You're missing a lot of like actually topically, there are a lot of things that are missing there. So, or you can find something that's like really focused on one type of product analytics goal, like product-led marketing strategy or product-led growth strategies. But then everything is about that, right? And that's not everybody. So
in terms of, so you mentioned the goals, they were both like human-oriented goals around helping people feel more confident using the tools, and then business-oriented goals about usage of Amplitude. In terms of the major like constraints that you're running into in terms of, okay, we'd be growing more if this obstacle wasn't there, or like what are the main kind of challenges that you're feeling in achieving both those human goals and those business-oriented goals?
I think we don't have a direction, we have like things that are working if we measure really, really close goals, like new members generated or active members each week, like really things that are like tied, like 1 + 1 = 2 kind of closeness. But and that's the only indication that I have, like something is working. And then there's a lot of anecdotal stuff, like and qualitative stuff, which is fine. But like there's no direction of where the growth is heading. And is that growth short term or long term? Like, are we going to see like just this interesting like curve and then it plummets? Or is it actually going to like steady itself and plateau over time and have like really nice, sustainable, predictable growth? Even if it's not insane, that's better than just like hitting a peak and then tanking and getting to zero.
Right.
So I don't know if we're growing or if we're just slowly declining. Maybe that.
Well, that's a negative way to look at it. I think a lot of indications saying that you're doing pretty well. So
how leaky is my bucket?
I mean, in terms of how those kind of data strategy challenges affect you personally, as somebody that is trying to get work done every day and like working with other people within Amplitude and with the community, how does that manifest itself for you, like personally? Like what I imagine there's some pain that emerges out of some of that ambiguity around your direction. Is there anything you can say about that?
Yeah, like I can't go deep in anything. So if I can't go deep in anything, if I try to like spread myself thin by like spinning a million plates at one time and getting growth out of spinning a million plates at one time, like maybe one, it's unsustainable, but let's pretend that I can sustain it. Like I'm gonna have to keep feeding that with speed and volume forever versus like finding like maybe the 2 or 3 opportunities and populations, like audiences that really, really matter and going very, very deep on that. And I think that's going to become like, it's going to generate a lot more sustainable growth and probably it's probably going to take me like further. So, yeah.
And then another kind of related question to that would be like, who are the people that you collaborate with in the community? Like who are the different, either people within Amplitude or outside of Amplitude that you're interacting with to make this whole community thing happen?
I'm trying to think, because like it's only me full time. And then there's Francisca, my boss, but it's like a fraction of her time. And then there's a marketing operations person, and it's a fraction of his time. So I think maybe, and it's actually growing every week. It increases. It's probably right now 50% community member input in terms of how we're shaping it. Part of it is data, because community member input shows up in the numbers, and it also shows up like, in one-on-one conversations or like seeing what's happening in Slack. So it's actually more than that. I think 75% of it is just driven by community members and what they're doing and then what they're telling me.
And then would you say that the sort of strategic ambiguity or kind of lack of direction that you feel, does that affect your ability to collaborate with other people in terms of where you're taking this, or not so much?
I mean, it does for sure for members because they have ideas and I can't support all of them. And because it's like a very young community, like it's only 5 months old, like I was actually speaking with a couple of members who are super active, and I asked them if they had relationships with anybody other than me or like one of the speakers or anything like that for one of our events. And they said no. And I was like, well, I guess that's okay for now, but it's not sustainable. So like, because I'm doing too many things and spread too thin, like I can't serve everything the community members want. And that's kind of a shame, because like they're actually really good sources of truth. They're like they're really good sources of distraction, but they're also very good sources of, and like I can't identify what's what.
It's hard to imagine that it's only 5 months old. It feels like a very robust community from my outside perspective. So that's pretty.
The life of a startup. It's actually 4 years old or something.
Now to get a little bit more like topical, I know that we're both really bought into this idea of like mapping a strategy. I'm curious, like what motivates you to want to do that? Like what does the job to be done by strategy maps in your mind? And like, why is it something that you're spending your precious time on currently in this role where you already have too many other things to do?
Because I'm a marketer, right? Like I've been a marketer my entire career, and the journey is short for a marketer. You get them over to someone who's going to take it to revenue, either to sales or to a product, like to a product sign up. And then it's basically done. Like I think there are other marketing teams that take it further, especially like within growth marketing. But for me, my entire career has just been like that handoff has been someone is going to take it now all the way to revenue. And this is the first time in my entire career that like my work, right? Like I see lots of pipeline dashboards and I see lots of revenue charts, but none of that is my work after a certain point. And for this, like my work actually extends a lot further because like the community is a product and the members are like revenue potential opportunities. And I have to move all of these things forward into some sort of business outcome. I've never had to do that before in my life.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. It's like a lot of people will have their work very much framed by where they are in the org structure or something, and they can work within some kind of predefined container where like there's so much ambiguity in what you're doing, and like it makes sense to Amplitude as a community, but exactly how does that plug into different objectives is really unclear, and there could be so many different ways that it could be done. So it just leaves you so much more kind of uncharted territory to kind of map on your own to figure out how your work kind of connects to the big picture, and nobody's there to do it for you. That's completely on you to both do the tactical day-to-day work and like the big picture thinking about how it fits into the big picture of Amplitude, which sounds
is
like
awesome. I think I mean I love that. So if I build a map, then they're going to follow my map. If someone builds a map for me, I'm going to hate that map. So I better be the one to build the map.
You do not want to have AI build the map for you then.
I don't want anyone me to build.
All right. Okay. We're clear on that. It's your map. Nobody's going to try to say it's not. In terms of the overall approach to this, so as we've discussed before, there's like the working backwards approach from let's look at those like long-term outcomes for Amplitude, and then let's go backwards from there in terms of like what are the inputs into that. Or there's the more, I can't remember, you said it really well when we talked previously about like dealing with reality version, where you actually start with, okay, you're already doing a bunch of work. Probably all of it, or at least most of it, is probably very strategic while you're doing it. So it's kind of like, let's build it up from the work, or let's build it backwards from the outcomes. Like, is there one of those directions that feels more, that has less friction in your brain?
I mean, starting with the work is helpful because it didn't come from nowhere. Like those are, they exist for a reason. So I think let's test those.
And just to get a sense of like the scope of it, like how many, it's probably scary to even make you think about this, but like how many concurrent initiatives do you think you have right now?
It is a lot to think about. Like, is there?
Right, just to give you, is it more than 10?
No, it's probably 10. It's probably, yeah.
Why don't we start by just enumerating out some of them? So we're going to add a bet, and let's not even like go into what each bet is yet. Let's just list out what some of these bets are that you're doing.
When you say bets, do you mean like the actual programs that I'm running? Or...
Yeah, I guess we could come at it. That's a good point. So we could come at it from two angles to describe like the work. One of them would be more like the hypotheses that you have. It's like the bet is that by having X kind of event, we'll get people to attend more events or something, versus we could just be more like brass tacks about it and be like, okay, like these are the things that are happening, and not even frame them strategically quite yet. Okay, so in this case,
that would be good.
In this case, I won't use bets. I'm going to use work streams, because it's just like work that is happening. All right. So, all right. What's one piece of work that's happening?
We have our monthly North Star metric jam sessions. which is interesting. And then we have our AI X product series. Salmon Koal works team.
AIX, what was it called?
Product
Series. Okay.
Yeah. And then we have our How I Amplitude series.
How I
Amplitude. Yeah. And then we have a newsletter. We have like, I don't know how to bucket it because it's a lot of work, which is just engaging with members in Slack.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to put it, but yeah, it's not an insignificant amount of work.
And that would just be more like replying to people and just getting to know people in the community. And
it's that there's like engaging with members. Like I proactively look at our active members and I reach out and I try to book one-on-ones with them, and I do that multiple of those a week. And then like new members, I try to ask them to jump on calls with me. So it's actually quite a bit of time now talking to humans. And then on the other side, there's like content creation and like public channels, right? So
there's more like engaging with, I'll just call it individual Slack members.
Yeah.
And then another one, which is more Slack content creation.
Yeah, that's right. We have a PLG clinic series that we're kicking off very soon, which you should join. Be fun. So that's a good one, the PLG clinic series.
Even though I feel moderately burned by PLG, I could still maybe come.
That's exactly why. It's a series of just a bunch of tear downs. Tear it all down.
Yeah, I like it. So what did you call it? PLG what? PLG clinic? Series? Oh, PLG clinic series.
Yeah, for your broken and sick PLG strategies.
Okay, I won't type all of that out.
It's hospital. And then we have we're going to start a data governance series.
Yeah.
That's like happening very quickly, weirdly. And then we have a little analytics 101 cohort.
Sorry, data governance series. All right.
Not all of these are live. Is that okay? Like some of these are.
That is more than okay.
Okay. And then there's our analytics 101 cohort.
Analytics 101 one-on-one cohort.
No, 101.
Oh, 101. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that another series or is that something different? Or that's more like a recurring series?
Yeah, it's like a little group. It's like a little study group. And then there's the startup group. There is like a bunch of startup people who want to talk about startup things. And that helps serve, because we have a scholarship plan where if you're a startup, you get the Amplitude Growth Plan free for a year. And that's like another plan. It's interesting, right? Because like there's really high monetization potential there if they're activated well and like it's integrated into their workflows.
So this one kind of is kind of feeding into something, which is the Amplitude Scholarship Program signups, kind of.
Not it could be both. It could be signups and then also ultimately opportunity. Like I guess it would be expand because they're customers, but because they get Amplitude free for a year, they're not paying customers. And it's like a very, very long reverse trial, right? Like you get the growth plan free for a year, and then after that, you either pay or you downgrade back to starter and you lose a bunch of paid features.
So it's almost like, so it's getting people to start this very long trial that will then hopefully lead to them signing up.
Yeah, but some of them are already scholarship customers.
Okay.
So there's like new business and then renewal business in this population. Yeah,
They call it
converting.
like converting scholarship member. I don't know how to say this right. Scholarship program
Yeah,
participants.
or you
uh,
can just plan converting
what?
scholarship plan for
Okay,
like need.
okay. Let's leave with that. And then, um, interesting. Okay, anything else?
Um, I think so. I mean, we can probably stop here for now. I think
We can
there's,
start with that. So it seems, would it be fair if I
I can
kind
pull
of
up the
bucketed
data.
together this series? There's like a bunch of different series that you're doing.
Oh, there's a hackathon. There is a hackathon.
Oh, nice. You cannot forget the hackathon.
There's going to be another hackathon. And we're going to start in-person events in October.
Oh, nice.
I know. I mean, I don't know how we're going to do all this stuff, but we're doing all the things. Do you see why I need a map? This is
Yeah.
insane. And yet I'm going to do every single one of these things. Just
Yeah, I'm gonna
blows
write
my
hackathon plural. Uh,
hackathon. Exactly.
hackathons. Yeah, so if you were to like, you definitely need a map. Like, if you were to logically group these into different like buckets, like how would you how would you want to do that?
There are two ways we can group it. There are, nope, let's do it. There is like the user way of like, are you an Amplitude user or not? Like that's one way. But there's like an interesting overlap there where sometimes the content it's okay, right? It's okay for both. And then there's large group, small group, one-on-one dynamics. And that's a bucket because it's really easy to get large groups together and they have no relationship with anybody except the content. And then when you have small groups together, they start to have relationships with each other, which is really valuable for community. And then the one-on-ones are good, but only really good if they have it with more than just me, like one-on-one relationships. So one-on-one relationships are gold if it's not with just me. And then like small group dynamics are gold as well because they start to talk to each other and it creates a lot of safety.
Right. I'm thinking about like something, it seems like, tell me if I'm not thinking about this right, but like there's like series that you run.
Yeah.
You could say like there's one question which is, okay, well, like which are the best series that you could be running? Another bigger question would be like, should you be doing series at all? Like, I'm just to throw out a big sort of question. So it's almost like there's like the meta bet of we are doing, I don't know what the like, I guess content series to do X. And then that could be a way to like group together a bunch of the series. And then there could also be does that kind of chunking make sense or am I kind of on a weird track with that?
It's an interesting bet. The reason why we did series, like actually every single one of them is a series because it's how you create a habit with community. And events are a good way because it's very easy to sign up and then like show up or not show up, but like think you're a part of the series as long as you're signed up. So it's like it creates a little bit of belonging in a very easy way. Like when we were doing one-off things, like there was no way to come back in front of a person and
Right.
say like, hey, you should join Slack now. It's like too soon. But the series set this expectation of like for the next 4 weeks, we're gonna do this thing like week after week, and like here's the plan, and like we're all gonna agree to the plan, and you're gonna sign up, which means you're agreeing to the plan. And like it's just like a it's like a kind of a, I don't want to say it's a trick, but it's a way to start building a little bit of a habit and set an expectation that we're going to stay in your life for a certain amount of time and you've like signed up for it.
Yeah, so I think this is me also being like a newbie with how to talk about some community things, but like something like newsletter, Slack content creation, engaging with individual members feel like one kind of animal where like we're running these like series feel like a different type of animal because these are like all you would call them all events like all of these things are events where this is like a newsletter.
The 101 cohort is like probably in the Slack content creation then. Like that's like a purely, it'll be events eventually. Like the map jam. Like where would you put the map jam? Which is
Um,
just a little test. So let's pretend we're still doing them like
yeah, I mean,
that.
I think that these would be, and actually that's the only one that I've actually been to myself. So so I don't actually have more trouble comparing it to the other ones. For the series, like it's a general format of them. Uh, there's like a presenter, and then people kind of join to watch somebody speak about a topic, and then have some kind of breakout conversations around it.
Kind of, it's more like the way we do the North Star metric jam sessions where there's an expert and the live case study. It depends on what it is, actually. It could be a speaker. It could be like a watch something happen live, like watch an expert do a thing live in front of you with like a real volunteer. And there's always question time, right? Like you can, I don't know, I can't remember how other events are. Like you go to a webinar, can you ask a bunch of questions? Like this is very audience engagement heavy.
Did we call them large group
Yeah.
events?
Yeah, there's large group, there's small group, and then there's one-on-one. Like it's all relationship dynamic.
Okay, so large group events.
There's small group, yeah.
Yeah, small group events.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. We had this workshop where a couple hundred people signed up and only 40 something people showed up, right? And usually around like the 30-minute mark, people leave. We lose like a lot of people at the 30-minute mark for 1 hour sessions. And in this one with like the 40-person group, like almost nobody left until the very end. And we did like this workshop thing in Miro, which historically has not gone super well. Like people just kind of check out. Almost everyone was engaged. And we were like, okay, there is something here with a small group event. And like a lot of them moved over into Slack. Like there was just something good happening there with a smaller group.
So with small groups, members are more engaged and stick with it.
Yeah. But like we can't stop there. Like let's pretend small groups are the thing. Then we should be really intentional about like who ends up in that group. It should be a good mix of people who can learn from each other and like give and take. And so there has to be like some similarities, but different levels of maturity.
Yeah. So one bet could be like, that's part of that bet would be like optimize composition of small groups.
Yeah, that's right. So the PLG clinic series, we're testing it in August and I'm intentionally making it small, right? Like I only want 150 people to sign up and I'm hoping like 30 to 40 people actually show up. It's a 4-part series. And we really want to make sure that there are experts and, novices in this group. Because experts like will want to share what they've learned and give back. We'll have like experts overall anyways, and they can learn from each other. And like the novices want to learn from each other too. But like a good mix of like people who are trying to build their brand, people who are just really like love the topic, people who really need to learn. Like that matters, because if you're in a small group and like you don't feel like you're getting any value, like why am I in a group with these people? Like we've all been there before, then like that's not a good small group experience.
Right. So there's different performing. So not all small groups are created equal.
Yeah.
So then just to categorize these a bit, which of these other events fall in the category of small groups versus large groups?
I think data governance will. I think we should do the North Star metric jam sessions in a smaller group, depending
I like that.
But like I think that is going to be better in a smaller group. The AIX product will always be big because it's very, what are you going to put into action? And then the How I Amplitude series is, I think it could be big or it could be small depending on the topic and the speaker. But
Right.
it's not important for it. So maybe that's the thing. It's not important for it to be small.
Okay. It's not like
it's not
a key part of the essence of it for it to be small. Got it.
Yeah.
So actually I'm gonna do this a little bit differently. Okay, so then we have So then for large group events, so I get why you would do small group events because people are more engaged. So like, what is the hypothesis behind? Is this like a way to reach more people with less energy?
No, it's I can tell you something that worked really well. We got like that Jorge Mazal, it's the CPO of Duolingo, to come in and do an AMA, and like everyone just lost their minds because everyone's trying to be like figure out Duolingo's like gamification strategy. And you got a bunch of people there, and it created like a lot of buzz and a lot of like, how do I do it? How do I do it? How do I do it? Like there, like a lot of desire became tangible. And then we brought in somebody to show how they do it. And that, like, actually, I thought that would be a small group event, but it ended up just exploding. But that's like a good, for me, that would be like a good journey where we bring in a large group to talk about at a higher level, like an interesting way to solve a problem that you have. And then the small group is, how do you actually solve that problem? Like step by step. And then in Slack, like, let's talk about how you're actually going to put that stuff into practice. Like, are you really doing that?
I love that. So it's almost like the hypothesis is to,
it's like motivation and inspiration.
Kind of kick off a journey.
Yeah.
Kick off journeys of going deeper into different topics.
Yeah. It's like the why.
Through other Amplitude community programming. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of actually is like a feeder into the small group events in a way.
That's the bet that I think we're getting towards, where you have like, you establish your why on a topic in the large group, and then you establish your how in these small group events.
Yeah, so like, okay, I like that. I'll add a note about that. So get people establish a why, I'll say. And then then that makes sense for small groups and more like collaborative working sessions.
Right. It's safe.
Yeah, like safe spaces to learn how.
Yeah, exactly. And then like the safe space to practice is in Slack.
Okay, and then so
like
interesting.
Yeah.
So and that kind of so how does practice happen in Slack exactly?
Right now it just happens in the form of questions. Like, I'm trying to do this thing, and then some people actually try the thing that was suggested to them. So it doesn't happen together in real time. The Analytics 101 cohort is a bit like practicing. It's more like learning together, but I would say it's like practice doesn't happen just by doing the thing. Sometimes it's just like building a habit in order to start doing the thing regularly. So the Analytics 101 cohort is a bit of practicing. The Map Jam was meant to be a bit of practicing. I still want to do it.
Cool. Yeah, that's interesting. So it leads to like more Slack engagement. And then it also, which one? Where'd my cohort go? Okay. And this kind of work stream is kind of facilitating the Slack engagement that's kind of stemming from the small groups. So like the small groups kickstart the cohort. There's a relationship there.
Not really. I don't actually. I mean, the cohort came from the members, right? Like, I got a lot of DMs from people saying, I'm new to Amplitude and I don't know where to get started. And so I put out this ask, like, does anyone want to do our Academy Getting Started course together? And this is interesting because like the How I Amplitude speaker, the first one, he actually inspired this idea for me because he has had the Amplitude free plan for like 2 years, and he's building this like app on the side from his like side hustle. And he never actually used Amplitude, even though he had starter plan. Then he finally had like this weekend free. and he decided to go through all of these academy courses, and it's like completely blown away how he's building this product, and he's thinking like maybe he can make a business out of it, right? Like he's seeing so many opportunities, and he's seeing way more growth than he has in like 2 years because he figured out, and it has nothing to do with like the product, right? It was just like actually using analytics to understand what's going on, like us in this map. And I thought like, okay, that first hump, let's try to help people get through it together. And I get a lot of messages from people saying, I'm just getting started with Amplitude and I don't know where to get started. And then this cohort was born.
Yeah, I love how that's like such like an emergent thing that just bubbles up. By the way,
So there's like another thing of like just members, like things like the data governance thing, like member inspired, member led stuff.
And is that something that but you still do things to kind of actively kind of coach that? So it's not like it just totally happens on your own. It requires some of your work to kind of bring it all the way to fruition.
A ton. It's a lot of just being like hype girl.
Member inspired groups, is that what you call them?
Yeah. Like they could be programs or groups. Yeah. But yeah, I usually I smell an idea and then I hype it out, and if there's something there, there's something there.
Got it. So that, and the analytics 101 cohort is an example of that.
It is, and the data governance one is an example of that too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move that one. Or is that one both an example of a small group event? So some of the small group events are.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. That's exactly right. And this is like, it's brilliant. It's exactly how it should be. The member inspired groups. Like if all our small group events were member inspired, that'd be wonderful. If everything was member inspired, that'd be wonderful.
But then you get into some of the questions around maybe some groups are maybe outside of your strategy.
Yeah, like the AI one.
Like the AI one.
Yeah, for sure.
So I know that we're almost out of time. Do you want to keep going or do you want to stop and pick it up later?
I can keep going for a little bit longer.
Yeah, so let's talk about that example. That's really interesting. So let's say members were like, okay, we're going to do this AI group, and you feel a little bit like that's not within exactly what we're trying to do here at Amplitude. Can you explain more, like why?
I think it's just a matter of resources. So if the AI group, well, if we could find a way to tie it back to something that mattered, like building product, which, you kind of feel like you can, then that'd be great. But the fact that it takes time to like come up with these events, and it takes a bit of a tax on our database as well, because we're marketing it and grabbing attention from like other probably more valuable programs that are closer to Amplitude. And then like people will come, and that takes time as well. And so all of that just comes down to like, is this really good a use of time? It's not really like anything more. It's not anything more than that. Is it like creates a lot of like leak and dilutes a lot of other efforts that are probably more important.
Yeah, so it's almost like it's not exactly like it doesn't fit into this map. It's more like there's some like principles of kind of what's on topic for the Amplitude community that's more tied directly to product, and it's almost like it doesn't.
It's a stretch. Like if
it's just not quite related. It's just not quite on topic enough.
It's kind of isn't like if we kept building the map, then I'm pretty sure we would see more and more red numbers or like red arrows and lines coming back to the AIX product series. Like I don't think it's probably going to be very well correlated to the business outcomes. But like maybe that's kind of like this weird dream of AI. And then
it makes me actually want to like map out like some of these metrics. So it would be like just like some of the obvious ones, like how many of these are, maybe they're not obvious, but like large group attendance would be one metric.
Yeah, attendance is a good one.
And then like small group attendance would be another one.
Right.
And then in theory, there should be a relationship between them, because you're saying that like the strategy is for the large groups to feed the small groups, and then also like you could even have another one that's like member inspired group attendance.
And but there's like all of this really just feeds into Slack.
Yeah,
Is that
member.
true? Not necessarily.
What was that?
No, yeah, I was thinking like all of this feeds into Slack, but that's like not necessarily true, but it's probably pretty true.
Yeah, I think that would be a good. Maybe that is a really good way to like. So this, let's actually just represent it this way and abandon the other way. So Slack engagement, and then let's see, what are we? So I feel like this is like, at least for me, it's been like educational and learning what your strategy is in terms of how do large groups impact small groups. Wait, yeah, which goes into, it's like a little journey here that would be interesting to measure, and then you could see like how like we plugged in the data, like how correlated are they.
But like Slack, I mean, people go from large group to Slack all the time.
Okay, so that doesn't have to be just like a.
Yeah.
It can really be. It's really kind of like that.
It's almost like the other way around, where I mean, it's not like this is an interesting one. This is an interesting one, trying to understand the relationships between these different dynamics. Because ultimately,
it's a growth loop, right?
yeah, it's interesting though. Like, I think like I think like the goal here is creating content in Slack.
Content created in Slack, which is
Yeah,
different than Slack engagement.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's the same. It's about the same. Well, Slack engagement, yeah, content creation, yeah, Slack engagement. You're right. Okay.
Or do you want to call it? Which one resonates more to call it?
I think content creation in Slack.
Slack.
Because you can like emoji a bunch of stuff, and like that means you're alive and reading the thing and you like it, but it doesn't create a lot of value for other members. It's like the tiniest input. There's someone alive.
And it does seem that this kind of will, in theory, like feed all of these, just to make this a total tangled web. Is that right? Or does that obfuscate things to add that direction?
Yeah, it doesn't really. It could. But I also like, even if it could, like, I don't know how important that is, because the attendance isn't as important to me. Maybe it is. I don't know. What are we trying to get to? Like, what happens after? Or maybe like let's tie this back to what we currently have.
Yeah, so then it actually, so I kind of wish I had, let me get rid of some of, I'm going to delete some of these. Well, I kind of like the,
Yeah.
actually, let me reorganize this a little bit. So this is like small group events. So this is more like the bet to have them, which then obviously goes into there. And then the member and stacks, right? It's going to look crazy for a second. And then we got all of this down there.
A lot, isn't it?
What's kind of cool is that we could actually break some of these into submaps if it starts getting like too. Let me give some more space for. So we have large groups. Okay. Trying to give these all room. Remember, I'm gonna get rid of this. So I'm trying to figure out how to make this visually like not quite as crazy, but I feel like the structure of it kind of makes sense. Are you with me, or have I lost you?
I think what I'm a little bit lost on is the attendance part of it. Like it's an important metric. It's an important metric, but it's like the large group events is pointing to small group attendance and large group attendance is floating.
Oh, so large group attendance. I missed that connection. Or that was
Ah,
that was a mistake. Okay, this will clear it up, I think. This is where we're excited to expand DoubleLoop to make this a lot easier.
oh,
With like features that would automatically lay this out and stuff like that.
cool. Are you guys building that?
Ironically, it's something that we had initially, but then we decided to let people like have at it with their own way of organizing. And now I feel like we need to figure out some combination of the two.
Did you mean this and it untangles it all?
We do have like the conversational AI interface that I could write. This is in beta where I could say untangle this map, and then it would just do it. But
Would
that
it?
I won't like try to do that right now. It's behind a special feature flag.
Oh man.
I know. Only for VIPs. I'm sorry. One day you can maybe be lucky enough to have it.
One day when my community is successful.
Yeah, only if your community is successful, then you get access to the feature flags. So does this actually make sense? So we have the end of the goal. At the end of the day, it's about Slack content creation. And then you're really doing all. This really shows like how hard work community is, because it's like to do that. It's not just a bunch of just like chatting in Slack. You're doing these large groups that are basically leading into these small groups. You're having members inspire them, which is also kind of feeding into them. And then you're doing all of the actual like work to like I don't know, what is the word, like hype up member inspired groups,
Oh yeah.
kind of like the bet.
But there's like the product. The product is a trigger to join a community, right? Like all of these things are manufactured reasons to get people together. And then there's Amplitude itself, where you're like, I have a problem. I don't know how to use it. I don't think I'm good at it. Why does it suck? Whatever. And then the product forces people into joining the community as well. And like all of these things, like
Yeah,
are ways to re-engage people. Like that's what we had, right? We had our support community. And if you had a really specific, like, oh, my snowflake thing is broken, then you'll go there and you'll ask the question. But there's no reason to come back once you get your snowflake question answered. And this is also like, you might have joined because of the product, but then you come back for these things. Because it's not just the product, right? You actually have to solve your problems.
yeah, I feel like that makes me want to do a separate customer journey map around just like the way that people join the community.
Yeah,
Which I think we could also do.
that's
Let
less
me,
important. I already have that stuff figured out.
you had some pretty cool, but I mean, it might also like, I think part of the goal of this entire thing is to have a framework for prioritizing work and for saying no to work that's less important. And I think the journey might be part of it, where it's like, this is all of this stuff is more like when somebody's already in your web, how do you engage
Right,
them?
right,
If,
right.
if there's more stuff around getting people to join like there's also the meta question of what's the bigger opportunity at this moment, to get more people to join, or is it to better engage people that do join? I'm sure it's a balance of the two.
No, at this point, it's this, right? Like 2 months ago, it was getting people to join because you need a critical mass for there to be like member inspired activities, and who's going to go to all these things anyways. But we're at a point where there are ideas and people are going to the things. So we're past that first hard stage. And now we need to like get this part figured out, being like the value creation of staying.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm sure that this helps create the flywheel in general.
I need a flywheel.
What was that?
I need a flywheel.
I'm sure you have one.
I'm gonna need one.
And then maybe just to put a fine point on it, like, okay, so why is Slack content creation important for Amplitude?
That's a great question. Why is Slack content creation important for Amplitude? It's like idea exchange. So remember in the beginning, I was saying how community solves a problem of people not wanting to talk about their analytics practice, especially like with this group, right? Like unless you're a data person, you're going to talk about it all day long. But this particular group on this particular topic, like you don't talk about like the experiments that you're running and why they suck, or what you're running and they're great and you don't want people to copy it. So content creation is that idea exchange actually happening, and people talking about analytics in front of other people, and sometimes they might mention Amplitude.
So ultimately it fits into those like business KPIs that you had.
Yeah.
So, and that like what you described puts like color to why. It's like, it's
Yeah.
almost like sort of qualitative thing around just like kind of elevating analytics in the consciousness of your members.
But there's also like a lot of this, especially the small group attendance and the one-on-one relationship, is like create safety. All of it actually kind of goes towards creating safety, except for the large group one. Like that doesn't do anything to create safety. But like one of the biggest barriers to talking about your analytics practice, if you're not an analytics person, is like not feeling stupid.
I love that. Yeah, it's by the way, one thing we want to do in DoubleLoop is make it so you can first have the more qualitative thing you're trying to achieve and then kind of enumerate the metrics underneath. But it seems, I love that as like a meta goal of create safety to talk about analytics. And then it seems like Slack content creation is a pretty good signal for that, because that's literally people are talking about analytics. So it's increasing the discourse.
Yeah, they talk about their struggles as well. So those things create a lot of safety as well, versus a community where you just talk about how great you are.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like it would make me want to, I'm sure you already have a some kind of I need help channel. And it seems like content in those kind of channels that are around people like reaching out for help and being vulnerable could be like a way to even hone in on that more directly, potentially.
I was thinking of a fails channel where it's just a confessions, and then we burn the channel every 24 hours. We have a new fails channel.
So what were some of those like business KPIs that were that spreadsheet?
Number of new plans, number of new land opportunities, number of new expand opportunities. Do we even need new? But yeah. And then number of weekly saving users, WSUs.
Number of new land opportunities. I just need the metric, but I don't know where it went.
I just saw it's the gold coyote.
There we go. It was camouflaging. Number of new weekly saving users.
And then number of new land.
Number of new land. So not just land opportunities.
Oh, sorry, new expand.
New number of new expands. Yeah. It almost feels like the holy grail would be if you could actually do a correlation between Slack content creation and these metrics.
Oh, that feels really hard. That feels really hard. Like I feel like it's, yeah, sure, why not?
I mean, it's a holy grail, but often holy grails are like impossible to achieve.
It just feels like there's so many, like, what would be what would be like more realistic is instead of new land and new expand. So the reason why I'm like, oh, it's really hard is because there are like humans in between that. Like number of new plans, number of weekly saving users, there's no humans. It's like straight from community to product. So that feels like, okay, maybe, but like number of new land and expands depends on a sales team, an SDR, and an AE, like doing the things they do in a way that gets them to these ops.
Yeah, it feels like
It's almost like number of new hand raisers is actually more feasible.
interesting number of new hand raisers. So that's people that are basically engaged with. Actually, yeah, define what a hand raiser is.
Someone who wants to spend time with a human to learn about the product.
Got it. So it's almost like, and are you able to have a sense of how many hand raisers are coming out of the community?
Well, hand raisers are like just on the ops, right? Like, yeah, new plans and number of, because hand raiser is not a step before plan, or it's not a step, like you can put all of those in line, like number of new plans, number of new hand raisers, and number of new weekly saving users, like we can probably directly influence those things.
Okay.
It's just the opportunities that we can't directly influence because there's like salespeople that need to be involved.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, it's, yeah. I mean, I would.
So this one debatable. So this one is like a.
It's after the hand raiser.
Okay, got it.
So land and expand, those are after the hand raiser.
So you actually can get credit for. Okay, this person was really like. Do you actually have a way of getting credit for that today? Like, if somebody expands and you're like, oh my god, they're really active in the community. Like,
well, like I think expand would be the same as land because you need a salesperson for that.
Okay, so that would
Yeah.
more go like there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then there's other interesting things too, but I think these are probably the most measurable ones. And we don't have a way to measure this right now because we don't have community members identified in Salesforce or in Amplitude. This is like a big gap.
Yeah.
But I want to try to build it regardless. Maybe this is a really good way for me to get some resources to get these things built in Salesforce.
Yeah, taking a step back. Is certainly, how do you feel about this exercise that we just did?
I mean, I feel really good about it. Like I feel super grateful. I think this actually is pretty accurate. So it's like it was a very good exercise. Now we need to get the data in to see what's actually happening. But this brings like a bit of order to what was happening before.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, is this stuff that is kind of like you already totally knew this, and it was like, did you learn anything about just like by thinking it through yourself, or was it more just like expressing kind of what was already in your brain essentially?
I mean, it's partly expressing what was in my brain and like organizing it better so that things become more intentional. Like everything was nothing was connected, so I didn't know what was important. Slack content creation, that's super important. Like, what does that mean? And getting people into a small group, that's super important. Like, what does that mean? So the fact that there are now relationships makes me feel like I know where I need to spend some more time on, maybe less time. Like the one thing I'm thinking is like, why do I have to put so much work into getting all these different types of programs going if it just ends up being streamlined into a couple of things that matter, which is getting large and then small groups together.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think the next, like, if we wanted to go to the next level on this, it would be about what are like going to be the principles you could use to decide how to distribute your time across these different leverage points. Like, and is there a bottleneck? Like, is a bottleneck more the large groups or the small groups, or?
I mean, I think I would look at who's creating content in Slack now, and then go back through these ideas and just see, like, do any of these things actually resonate with them? The people who showed up to these events, like, did they actually end up creating content in Slack? Like, I could maybe do some of that mapping in terms of the registration lists. too. But like I'm
Yeah.
really curious to know like analyze who's actually creating content and then start building more for them. And then like, are they good content creators? You know, we have some people in our community that do create a lot of content, but like we're never ever going to monetize off of them. So I want to remove them from the data set.
Yeah, one thing you could do, and I actually should unfortunately leave in a minute. I have to prepare for my next two meetings. Like even like short of like plugging in like data, you could
Yeah.
still like go like what is your confidence level? Like, and you could do that anecdotally. Like, is it true that people that do small groups are more likely to do Slack content creation? And you could be like, get high confidence. And you could do that by just looking at like, okay, I'm going to look at 10 people that were in small groups and just look at how active are they in Slack, or just stuff that's more like anecdotal, or is it like, oh maybe it's like, or maybe people that are doing large group, like is it true that people in large groups are more likely to do small groups? And that would just be one way to like test some of these assumptions without having to like completely instrument all the metrics if that's a pain in the butt.
We should instrument all of the metrics.
Well, I like that even better.
We should do
All right, cool. So maybe we can consider this session to be complete.
Oh,
Because I have to go and prepare for this other one. Do you think this is actually a fun thing to share publicly, or how did you feel about it?
yeah, I thought it was great. It's scary, isn't it, for people? Community building. But
Yeah,
whatever.
for me, like it demystified a lot of what that means. And
Oh,
also,
really?
yeah, like I think, I mean, as somebody that has a very like infantile community, like we don't really do any events at all. Like, and it makes me actually realize like what like it actually, this would be kind of, I mean, this could be a playbook that I think other people could benefit from, honestly,
Yeah.
because it's like for example, like I wouldn't, if you would ask me like, well, how do you like amp up Slack content creation, I wouldn't really have known how to, I wouldn't have known like, okay, well, you have to do these things. So like, I mean, for me, it was very educational.
I mean, I think for others, you don't like it's easy to share like mid-journey images, but like that's the whole product. But like stuff like analytics where it's boring and scary, then people freak out.
Thank you so much for watching this session. If you'd like to give strategy mapping a try, please head over to doubleloop.app. And if you click the schedule demo button, it'll lead to a Calendly where you can schedule a session with me where I'd love to learn about some of the strategic questions that you're trying to figure out. And also, if you're interested in doing a session like this that we can share publicly, I'd love to have that conversation as well. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn or Twitter, or you can email me at dan@doubleloop.app. Thank you very much.